The sound of my boots crunching against the gravel path was the only thing breaking the eerie silence of the desolate landscape. I had left Earth behind almost 2 years ago, and now, on this distant moon of Katerra, I had gotten used to the isolation. A former military medic turned scavenger, I didn't expect much from this planet beyond the occasional odd job to make a living. The pay was always good, but the work was often dirty and dangerous. Today's task was simple enough. Retrieve some salvage from an old warship wreckage buried in the plains just outside the settlement. As I approached the crash site, the faint hum of my ship in the distance was the only sign of life, other than the occasional chirp of local wildlife. But something was wrong. The wreckage that should have been charred and broken was strangely intact. It didn't look like the kind of battle damage that came from a typical skirmish. No, this was different. This felt deliberate. Someone knew something was here. I crouched low, scanning the wreckage for signs of movement. That's when I saw her. At first, it was just a glimpse of something shimmering in the sunlight, metal and skin alien in shape. But then, a sharp intake of breath made me realize she was alive. Crawling over the rocks, I approached cautiously. She was half hidden beneath the twisted hull of the ship, her body covered in deep gashes and burn marks. Her skin was a smooth, iridescent blue that shimmered like water on a hot day, and her long, dark hair clung to her bloodied face. I knelt beside her. Her breathing was ragged, shallow. She wasn't human, not by a long shot, but she had the look of someone who had been through hell. I could see the faint outline of some kind of weapon at her side, a weapon that had likely been used in the conflict she had just survived. I knew that kind of injury, having treated soldiers in the field for years. I reached out, touching her shoulder gently, hoping she wouldn't lash out. But instead, her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, she stared at me as though I was a ghost. The glow of her alien eyes was mesmerizing, but the pain etched on her face broke my heart. I can help you, I said quietly. I've got medical supplies. Her lips barely moved, but I caught the words. Leave, now. I wasn't sure if it was a command or a plea. But one thing was clear. She wasn't in a position to fight, much less get away on her own. I needed to make a choice. I reached into my pack, pulling out a med kit. The nanite injectors were my best bet to stabilize her enough to move her back to the ship. But as I worked quickly, trying to stabilize her wounds, I could feel a strange pull, an undeniable connection between us, even as I tried to ignore it. There was something almost familiar about her, something deep down in my gut that told me I was meant to be here, meant to save her. By the time I managed to stabilize her, the sky had turned a deep shade of orange. My ship was the only real shelter nearby, and I knew I had to get her there before the local wildlife got too curious. Carefully, I hoisted her onto my back, her small frame surprisingly light despite the damage to her body. As I made my way back to the ship, I noticed that she was still semi-conscious, her eyes flickering open and closed. "Who are you?" she asked weakly, her voice raspy. "My name's Jace," I replied, trying to keep the conversation light. "I'm a scavenger, just trying to make it day by day." She didn't respond immediately, but I felt her breathing even out as I entered the ship. The medical bed was the most comfortable place I could offer her, and I worked quickly to set up and apply more advanced bandages. I wasn't sure how long she would take to heal, but I had no intention of leaving her in such a vulnerable state. My ship had the basics of medical tech, and I knew I could help her recover. But that wasn't the real issue. She was an alien, and her people, whoever they were probably far away. But despite the odds, she had survived. And that made her strong. So why did she look at me with such distrust? Days passed. I kept my distance, only checking in on her at the necessary times. But the more time we spent together, the more I noticed how her presence seemed to affect everything around her. She was different even beyond the physical. There was something in the way she moved, something in the way her eyes lingered on me when she thought I wasn't looking. She called herself Lira, and as the days went on, we started communicating more. At first, it was awkward as I struggled to understand her language, but soon enough the communication became easier. I found out that she was a warrior, one of the last of her kind. Her people had been caught in a brutal war, and she had been part of a covert mission to sabotage the enemy's weapons facility. But something had gone wrong, and her squad had been wiped out. She was the only one who survived. We both knew that it wasn't safe for her to stay here. The wreckage of her ship was too close to the settlement, and the chances of her enemies finding her were high. But every time I suggested we leave, she refused. "I can't leave," she said one night, sitting beside me in the dim light of the ship. "My people will find me, and I will die protecting you if I must. But you will not leave my side." Jace frowned, confused. "I never asked for you to stay with me. I did what I could to help, but this is your battle. You don't owe me anything." "I owe you everything," she replied, her eyes locking onto mine with a fierceness that took me by surprise. "Without you, I would have died in that wreck. Without you, I am lost. I will stay by your side, Jace. That is my choice." Ending. The days turned to weeks, and Lyra's wounds began to heal. But as she regained her strength, I found myself questioning everything. She was strong, capable, and intelligent, more so than anyone I had ever met. But there was a bond between us now, something undeniable. She didn't want to leave, and I wasn't sure if I wanted her to. I tried to leave several times, to head out for more salvage runs or just to escape the tension that had built up between us. But each time I left, I came back to find her waiting for me, always there like some kind of shadow I couldn't shake. One day, while I was working on some repairs to the ship, she approached me. Her eyes were intense, but this time there was something softer in them. "Jace," she said, her voice almost gentle, "I know you wish to be free of me, but you must understand, what we share is not just a bond of life or death. It is more." I looked up at her, my heart pounding in my chest. "What do you mean?" She stepped closer, her hand reaching out to touch my cheek. "We are connected, Jace. My survival is tied to yours now. But so is my heart." I didn't have the words. There was so much I still didn't understand, so much about her people and their ways. But in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. I would never be alone again. We weren't just two strangers on a distant moon anymore. We were something more. And whatever that was, I wasn't about to let it slip away. "Then we stay together," I said softly. And so we did.